Hello everybody, welcome to Roman Just Codes. Prepare to break the boundaries of static design. Hello, I am Roman. Welcome back to Animations with Rive and Flutter, the series. We've harnessed the power of Rive and Flutter, but now it's time to take dynamic content to the next level. In this video, we will unlock the secrets of changing text within your Rive animations from our Flutter code. Imagine personalized greetings, dynamic data displays, and interactive storytelling, all driven by the flexibility of Rive and the logic of Flutter. Get ready to elevate your user experience with animations with Rive and Flutter. And if you end up liking this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can get notified of more content about Flutter and Rive coming my way. Thank you so much for your support. And with that, let's get started. So back on the application, in this part of the series, we're going to be showing you how we're going to be able to tap into text that has been created inside of Rive as some of those text components and the ability to change it programmatically from Flutter. So we're going to import again our RiveFile. We're going to make some tweaks to the text in order to make it discoverable by Flutter. And then programmatically, we're going to be able to access those text components and change their content programmatically. So why don't we go back to Rive? Actually, let's show the design. So what we're trying to accomplish in this part of the video is the ability to change that name. Like you see that it shows Mr. Bubbles. Like if you see that text up there, you're going to be able to change the part that says Mr. by your own text. Let's say you want to add more personalization to your applications and you want them to be able to change the name to something that aligns with them, their name, something more personalized. So that's exactly what Rive and Flutter will allow you to do. You add those text components in Rive, you animate them, you do whatever you want, but you have to mark them in such a way so that from Flutter, you're able to access them and then change them programmatically. What we're going to do in this part of the video is create a little form that will allow the user to tap on that icon in the top right corner. They will bring it up and they will have the ability to provide their own name. And then once you hit save name, it will be reflected on that top label of the mascot title widget that we created earlier. So you put your name in there, you hit save name, and then the name is going to be called something like that. So that's what we're going to be doing in this part of the video, where we're covering supporting, or in this case, changing text in Rive via Flutter. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's get after it. So I'm going to move this over to the side. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Rive. And once we're here in Rive, let's go to those elements that we want to change programmatically from Flutter. For example, the one that we want to change is right here, located in the mascot title. And the mascot title has this text called Mr. And then we have the one that's called Bubbles. You could change both, but for now, I just want to show you the ability to change one, because we want the character to still be named Bubbles, but then you can change like your own name, like Johnny Bubbles, Roman Bubbles, whatever you want to call it. So we're only going to change this top label right here. How do you mark text to be discoverable in Rive so that then you can find it in Flutter and change it programmatically? You have to export that text component. You have to mark it as exportable or discoverable, and this is the way that you do it. If this is your label, the way that you do it is you locate that text component, you expand it, and under here you have something called a run. And what is a text run? So text runs allow you to break your text into sections. In this particular case, I only have one single run, but you could have split it, let's say a sentence, into multiple sections. Each part of the sentence could be styled in a different way, could be programmatically changed, and you can change the content of it programmatically, maybe via some event or some type of action, or animated in a particular way. So that is the beauty of text runs. So text runs allow you to break your text into multiple sections. Typically, they're used to apply a variety of styles for a single block of text, for example. Most tools provide you text runs behind the scenes, but what I like about Rive is that Rive exposes that and gives you greater control when dynamically changing text at runtime. And one of the great things of it is that it also makes it available for any of the runtimes that Rive has support for. You're able to change the text programmatically. So let me show you how to do that. So you grab the run, so you expand the component, your text component, and select that run, which is one portion of the text. It just shows Mr. And then what you do is you right click on it and you select export name. By just saying export name, what this does is you're marking this text to be discoverable from your runtime, when you run your runtime in any given platform, you can access that text run and then you can change it programmatically. The way that you discover that text component is by that name that you just provided right there. But this is not a very good one. Why don't you change it to something more descriptive? In this case, I'm going to call it mascot name. So now when we pull this state machine from this specific artboard, in this case, mascot title, from that artboard and via the state machine, I will be able to query for that mascot name text run, and then I'm going to be able to find it, change the text, and then programmatically show something different using the same font style. Of course, if your font supports those characters, then you should be able to change for any text with any characters and whatnot. So that's why I encourage people to, let's say, if you want to use your custom fonts, you need to upgrade to the next level from the free. You want to be in the Voyager, and then you have like font support at a minimum, and then you can bring your own font with your own content and make it very dynamic, very personalized, very on brand to the designs that you're building. So I just made it available. That's it. I just made it ready. I just made it available so that now I can find it through Flutter and then I can change it programmatically. Other things that I want to change now that I'm at it, I'm going to change the labels in these buttons. So I'm going to go to the jump button. I'm going to go to that text and I'm just going to call it button label. That way, remember, so I created a widget that represents either one of these artboards, and then the name, remember, is based off of that enumeration. It's either jump, button, wave, button, name, button. I can use the same name for each one of these labels, and programmatically I can access them and then change it accordingly. For example, if I instantiate the mascot button and then I use the jump version of that button, I can find that text with that specific label called button label, and then I'm going to be able to programmatically change it. So that's the reason why I wanted to make it very reusable, very widget-like. And now I'm going to just do export name on that. I'm going to do the same thing and I'm going to name it exactly the same way. So I'm going to go to that text. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to open the main button, rename the text to say button label, and I'm going to export it as well. I'm going to do the name button, expand my, find that text, go inside of the run, call it button label, and export it as well. So I've exported all the text labels that I'm interested about in changing programmatically for the name button, wave button, jump button, and also in my widget for the name title right here, just that piece. And now all I need to do is re-export my RiveFile, and I know that those values are going to be discoverable. If I try it now, I won't be able to find them. I won't be able to change them programmatically. I have to do this first, then replace the existing Rive. So let's do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to export it. I'm going to do export, and I'm going to overwrite the existing hello rive.rive file. I'm just going to overwrite it. And now I'm going to go back to my project and replace that file right there. So here I am. I know this is my new file. I am going to go to the assets animations, drop the new one, replace it, and then now I'm ready to start the next phase, which is now finding that value and replacing it accordingly. We can do a simple text, but I'd rather do the actual deal where we refactor a few of these pieces, showing you the design. We're gonna bring this component right here, which is gonna be like a little form, but it's gonna be shown in the bottom sheet. So I'm gonna create a little component, a little form that just contains a text field. It contains that button, and then we're just gonna trigger the change on the name, and then we're going to update it accordingly. So why don't we do that now? So with our file replaced, with the hello rive.rive animation file replaced, now we're going to proceed in doing some refactorings, because now what we want to do is be able to find those exported text components, those same components that in Rive we just went and did export name. Now we're going to be able to find them programmatically from Flutter in a streamlined fashion. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do some refactoring. We're going to start with that mascot title widget that contains that Mr. label, and then we're going to make that programmatically editable, pretty much. So what we're going to do is this mascot title, we're going to be refactoring this widget. I'm going to select it, and instead this widget is going to be receiving a new parameter. So in this case, we're going to receive just a string value as the name that we would like to change and personalize. So I'm just going to add final string, and we're just going to call it name, just like that. I'm going to make it optional. So I'm just going to say this.name equals Mr. So like by default, it's always gonna say Mr. whether or not you want to change it. So if you don't provide it, at least it has a default name already. So the way that you do is you come all the way down and see here how you are able to load the animation, the same file, the same hello rive.rive. You capture the callback that tells you that the Rive animation file has loaded successfully, that the state machine has been instantiated, and you have bound the artboard with the state machine. Now what you're going to do is find that specific text run. The way that you do it, and it's available via Rive, you have to do it like this. You have your controller and you have your artboard. Now through the artboard, if we go back to the RiveFile, this artboard has this text, this mascot name label. Remember we said export name. Now this mascot name should be available if you just find it by looking at this text run. There's a specific type of object called text value run that is exactly the one that we're going to try to find via the artboard. So the way that you do it is you create an instance of text value run. We're just going to call it mascot text. We're going to use the artboard, and then you're going to use a property called component, just like this. And then this component, you can specify one specific type. In this particular case, your artboard may have other components internally, but we're going to find a text value run component. So I'm going to say, find me the text value run component, but I wanted to match a specific name. In this case, I already know the name. The name is mascot name. And just like that, I am able to retrieve that specific mascot name. If you see there, I'm using the exclamation point because this may be a nullable value, but I know that this value exists. If not, you know that it's gonna blow up for you. But in this particular case, I know that there is one, so I'm confident that it's gonna come through. I now store a reference to that text value run in this variable called mascot text. And all I need to do is say mascot text dot text, whatever has been injected via this mascot title widget, and then just do widget.name. So if I just pass any value, if I reload it right now, it still says Mr., right? But if I come back over to the mascot page and then I go to the mascot title and I say name and I pass Roman and then I rebuild, I should be able to see that value in there, and there it is. You see how simple it was? That's exactly how you would do it. I would also encourage you to change it to these buttons right here. We can do a little bit of refactoring on those buttons. So in the mascot button right here, I'm gonna add one additional parameter, and I'm just gonna call it final string label. And I'm not gonna make it required because you could pass a label, but I'm just gonna make it actually nullable. So I could just make it nullable, but I'll specify it in the parameter, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the actual value of the enumeration and just provide it as the default value. So I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. After I load the state machine, I know that the artboard has loaded successfully. I know the state machine has been instantiated. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna do text value run, and then I'm gonna call this button label, and I'm going to capture that value. I'm going to say artboard.component. I'm going to find components of type text value run with a specific name. In this particular case, remember we called it button. We call it button label. I'm going to confirm that right now. And if I select one of the buttons, that label is called button label. Perfect. We come right back and say, okay, grab me the button label from this label. So I'll just say button label dot text, and I check whether the label is null. I'll say if widget dot label, if it's not null, or I could just do this, like use the label if it's not null, otherwise use the default value that you have injected as the type of the button. So I just say widget dot action dot name dot to uppercase. I'm going to use the uppercase version of the enumeration corresponding to the button if no label has been provided. So I'm just going to reload my widget, and you see it says jump and then it says wave, but then here I'm going to try to rename my buttons right here. I'm going to come back down, and instead I'm going to pass a label, and instead of saying wave, this is the jump, I'm going to say it in Spanish like saltar, something like this. And if I reload it, I should be able to see that value right there. There you go. And then this is actually a premise in case that you want to provide localization options to your animations, and you want to do it via Flutter, but you want to make that text very animated. You want to make it very dynamic. And this is a very good way to do that. And now we're going to focus on building this little form that I showed you right here. We're going to build this little form that now will allow us to change the name programmatically. The person provides a name through that text field. They hit save name, and then the name is going to change. Now that you know that the text can be changed, now we're going to provide the conduit. We're going to provide a nice workflow to perform that from our application. So let's work on that right now. I'm going to move this to the side. Now let's create those components. So we're going to start with that little form. So let's go ahead and build out that experience. I'm going to create a new widget. I'm going to call it mascot name form.dart. This will be a stateful widget. We're going to call it just that, mascot name form. We'll just do the proper imports. And because this form will contain a text form field, of course, we need to create a text editing controller. So I'm just going to create it right here in place. I'm going to call it name controller. This is what will capture the input from the user, and we will associate it with the text form field. So I'll just instantiate it in place. Also, what we're going to do is immediately flesh out the components of that widget, which of course we're going to leverage this container, but we'll also create an outer stack. If you see the design, what I want is I want to create this little widget of the character just peeking out of a hole, like at the top of the form. For that, I need to overlap those components. So I need to create a stack for that. So let's do that. Let's just bring it over. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an outer stack that will wrap the whole thing. So I'll do stack. And then as the children, of course, yes, I will use a container. What I will do is I will add some padding for it. I want specific padding. I want to leave some room at the top for the little guy to be there in that space devoted for that little widget when it peeks out and greet the user as the form comes up. So something like that. So I'm just going to do top 100. Let's use like 100. Then we do, left, right, and then we do bottom as well. I'll do bottom 32 pixels as well. Perfect. So we have some padding in there. Now we can also apply some of the rest of the decoration. I want to add borders. I want to add border radius and whatnot. I'll start with a color. I'll just do a colors.white, just simple as that. I will add some border radius. So I'll do border radius, and then I'll do border radius. And I only want at the top, if you see the design, I only want the top right and the top left. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'll say border radius dot only because I only want to apply it to those two. So I'll do top left. Probably we'll just go with 32 pixels, and let's do the same for top right. That way it only shows for those. As the child of this container, I want this in a vertical position. So I need the text, I need the text form field, and then I need our mascot button, one of the ones that we created in Rive, and then we're going to bring it into this form. So I need to place this in a vertical position. So I will use a column for that. So let's just do exactly that. So I'll do the child of the container will be a column. I want that column to initially have the minimum height that it could occupy or just actually grow in regards to the children that it has internally. So of course I want to do a main axis size that min. So that would be the minimum height that it could occupy based on the contents of its children. I'll do a cross-axis alignment stretch because I wanted to stretch the full width of the screen or whichever parent container is enclosing it. And of course, I'm going to go with, I'm going to do some spacing around it. So let's do like 12 pixels or something like that. Now let's start laying out the children. As the first child, what I want to do is I'm going to do a text just like this one. So I want to add a text, then the text form field, and then the button. Why don't we try that? And then I'm going to type like enter the name of your, I think that's what it's called. Enter the name of your mascot. And then now I'll apply some styling, some alignment. So I'll do text align center because I want it center aligned. And then the style, I'll just inherit some of the stuff that I get from Material Design just to leverage a couple of the styles that are already there. So I'll do theme dot off context, and then I'll do text theme. I'll probably use like a title medium. We could use that one, but ensure that its color is a specific one that I want. So I'm going to override that, and I'll say colors that blue accent. Probably that could work in there. So I have my text in place. Now what I want to do is add a text form field right below it. So I'll do text form field. Perfect. Let's do some default properties assigned to the text form field, starting by the controller. So I'll assign the name controller to it. That way I can capture the input from the user and then dispatch it or bubble it up to whoever's interested in knowing about this. We will create some providers that will capture that name later on. So let's do that. Also, I'm going to set a max length of like 10, no more than that. I'm going to do max lines 1 min lines one, trying to enforce that it's just a single line. I'll do some styling just like up there. So I'll do theme dot of context. I want the style of the input text to be a given type. So I'll do text theme. Let's probably use this like body medium, and then we'll overwrite it the same way. And I want to enforce it to be black. Let's just go with that just in case. So I'll just say, okay, I want the content, the text inside of my text form field to be black, right? So I think this should be good like that because it's already, this text form field is already controlled by that controller. I can obtain the input later on. And then last but not least, I'm going to add the mascot button. So I'll do mascot button. And remember, because we've created specific actions that map to specific artboards in Rive, I already have my enum defined for it. So I'll go mascot actions dot, I believe it was name. And that brings back the one for the name. If I just say on action, of course, this by default just brings me back the same one that I'm clicking on, which is in this case, mascot actions.name. In this case, I'm not going to consume it. Why don't we start visualizing this? How would we visualize this widget? Like right now, nothing happens when I click, but let's start visualizing this form. So let me rebuild. Let's come back to the mascot page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right back up here where the icon button is, the one that is going to trigger it. And I'm going to display this mascot name form inside of a modal bottom sheet. So I'll do show modal bottom sheet. I have a context provided and I have my builder. So I'll just leverage this builder. And what I'm going to do right away is just return that widget. I'm just going to say return mascot name form, mascot name form. For now, we haven't specified any additional parameters. We'll get to that in a minute. I will just reload this. And if I click it, you see that it's coming together. There is the text field. I can type stuff. Nothing happens, of course, but we need to continue fleshing out this widget. So at least I just wanted to make sure that it's looking great. There's my button. There's the label. There's the text field. Now let's start fleshing it out a little more. So what I want to actually do for this mascot name form is actually provide a callback that when we press the button, it just bubbles up the edited mascot name from the text form field. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to provide a callback. It's going to be type function that takes a string and we're going to call it on updated name, something like that. And let's make it require, that way we enforce that this parameter, we enforce that this callback is provided. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do is when the user clicks on that button right here, we bubble up that event. So now let's go to the mascot name form. Let's add an additional parameter that will be a callback. So it will be a callback. So we'll say final, it will be type function. And this function will take a string parameter. And then we're just going to call it on updated name. Let's make it require, that way we enforce that users provide this callback so that they can get the updated name from inside of the form. So we'll just do required this on updated name. So now we're going to go right back down here in the on action button. And all we're going to do is invoke the method, and we're going to say widget dot on updated name and just pass the name controller dot text. Whatever the user has provided in that field is going to be bubbled up. Right up here in the mascot name form, of course, I am enforcing that. If we go back to the mascot page, we need to provide that. And then later we will just capture that updated name right here. We're going to get to that in a second. Let's go back to the design. And remember, the design has this little guy right here, which I believe I have already an artboard ready for this. So we need to create a widget that encapsulates this specific artboard through Rive. Okay, so let's go over here. So I'm going to go back to Rive and then pull it from there, create a separate widget in Flutter, and then display it on top right there. So let's now proceed to do that. And if you see here in the RiveFile, I created this artboard called mascot header, which encapsulates the character peeking through a hole and having that animation. So that is exactly what I wanted to do. Let's try now and do exactly that. So I'm going to create an additional widget and I'm going to call this mascot header .dart, because it's going to be like at the header of the form, something like that. I'm just going to grab one of the existing widgets and I'm going to copy the content because it's pretty much the same. And here I'm going to rename this into a mascot header. I'm going to rename that. I'm using the same assets. Instead, this is called, if we go back to Rive, this is called mascot header or lowercase. So let's try that. I'm just going to make it mascot header. I'm going to rename the artboard and the state machine. But instead, I want to designate different dimensions for this widget. Let's make it a little bit different. I'll probably just use some dimensions like which are like 350 by, we'll do 180, something like that. But I know that at least this widget will encapsulate the functionality of the little guy just peeking out of a hole. And all we need to do is add it to this mascot name form. And that is the reason why I started off with this stack right here, because what I want is the container to encapsulate the whole form, but then right up here, I want it to show above the form, you know, kind of like overlapping a little bit. So that is exactly the kind of effect that I'm trying to achieve here in the form. So that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to start creating a position widget because this is a stack and I want to position it arbitrarily from the actual container that encapsulates the form. So I'm going to do positioned. Of course, the child will be the newly created mascot header widget. That said, I am going to provide some coordinates. I'm going to say, okay, so I'll do left 0, right 0, but top is minus 100 because I wanted to show at the top, but I want it to be pulled up and be kind of overlapping in a staggered fashion from the container form. So let's reload this. And let's try it again. Let's see how it's coming out. So if I click it, so if you see the guy is showing there, but it's getting clipped. Now, the way that you would do it is you go to the stack and you say clip behavior, clip.none. And there it is. Now let's try one more time. If I just click it, there it is, and now show in its full glory. So there it is. Now if I try to type something, Roman, nothing happens, of course. Now we need to wire that up. Let's try that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, how are we going to capture the name that is here? We've already capturing in the text form field. We are essentially bubbling it up, but nobody's capturing it. Nobody is retaining that state and nobody is holding it so that we can pass it above to the mascot title widget. So let's try that. What we need to do is create a specific provider for this. So we're going to go to our mascot providers. And just right down here, I'm going to create another river pod, but this time this will be a class. And we're going to use it to hold a string. We'll probably call it with a descriptive name. Let's just call it selected mascot name. We'll do the same naming convention. I say selected mascot name, and we're going to override the build method, which must return a string, and then we're overriding the build method. And for now, I'm going to return the default name for this provider. Like right now, later, we're going to allow, of course, people to change the name, and that is exactly why I'm going to be providing a utility method, a helper method to mutate the state, to change the state internally. So I'm just going to call it update mascot name. I'll pass, for example, the changed name, and right in here, all I'm going to say is state equals name. Now we have a provider that will hold this value for us, and then later we can react to it, we can listen to it, we can watch on this and rebuild accordingly. So now I'm going to save this. Now we have something that we can use to hold this value. Why don't we go back to the mascot page and then do some refactoring over there. So one of the first things that I want to do is not have this value hard coded. So what we're going to do is now create a consumer around the mascot title widget so that we can consume that default value. And if anybody changes it, then we will react to those changes and rebuild accordingly. So I'm going to do that. I am going to wrap this into a consumer. And of course, we'll do the same ritual. And then right here, I'm going to list it to the mascot name and watch my newly created provider, ref.watch. And then I'll do selected mascot name provider because it's already created for us. And now all I need to do, see, it currently says Roman because it is hard coded. So now let's feed it into this one. Let's rebuild and let's make sure that at least, let's come over here and let's make sure that at least is reflecting. There it is. So it's reflecting correctly. And this is perfect. So let's do that. So I'm going to save that. And now what I'm going to do is come right up here and inside of the mascot name form, in the callback that we're actually receiving the updated name, then we're going to also consume this provider and update it accordingly. So I'm going to wrap this whole form inside of another consumer, and this consumer will actually be listening for the changes in that selected name provider, selected mascot name provider. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this inside of another consumer. I'm just going to wrap this into a consumer, just like below. And then right here, I know I have access to the ref. That way I can access that provider. So let me just show you right here exactly what we're going to do. So right at the time when we are updating, we're going to do this. Ref.read, and we're going to say selected mascot name provider dot notifier, and then we're going to update the value accordingly. So I believe I called it update mascot name. There it is. And then how will we update the mascot name? We will say something like this. If updated name is not empty, if it's not empty, then you do updated name. Otherwise, let's use the default value of Mr. or something like that. Let's try this. What I could do is also I can trim the value just in case someone tries to be cute and add spaces to it. So let's try this. Let's see if this even works. So if I do this, it says Mr. I will click here to invoke the form. I will provide my name. And if I hit name, nothing happens. Another thing that I need to do is actually pop this form when I click on the updated name. So let's do this real quick and get rid of that. So I'll do navigator.ofContext, and then I just say pop. Something like that, right? And then once we do that, that means we're dismissing the form. Let's try it again. So if I do this and I click, dismisses the form. Now let's make sure that we're actually changing the name and capturing it. So if I come over here and I try to do it one more time, and then I have Mr., but then I bring up the form, put another name, and I say Roman, and then I do this, this should actually change. But the problem is that this widget, which is the one that contains the mascot title from Rive that contains the artboard, needs actually to be rebuilt with the change of this name, as opposed to just providing that value in it. It needs to be rebuilt. So a way to force this widget to be rebuilt, so you could use a value key for that. I can just say key, value key, and then you provide something unique to it. For example, in this case, I could use like a hash code. I could use the same mascot name. Let's try now and see if this forces the widget to be rebuilt. So I'm going to reload. It says Mr. I'm going to bring up the form. I'm going to put my name and say Roman. If I hit name, now you see it being reflected. So let's try it one more time. So now if I just do this and try to say Johnny the monster. See, it doesn't allow me because I've already set like a limit on the number of characters that I can allow. If I hit name, there it is. I also want to change this name value because remember, it just takes the default value of the enumeration that it has. So why don't we refactor that a little bit? Remember, I made it very flexible so that I can pass an additional label to it. So this label will say save name, and I can override the action. This is where by default is picking up the default label for this button, but if not, you can override the label. If I reload it like this, now if I try, now it says save name. I'm gonna say Rive, and I hit save name, and there it is. So why don't we just come back now? I think this is pretty much done up to this point. All I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna revert these changes over here, and then I'm gonna reload the application completely. I love the way that it is coming out. So you see, now you see the landing page showing you the character in its full form, completely assembled. Now you see the application here already assembled, and you can do all of these things. You can select multiple options for hats. You can make it jump. You can make it wave. You can make it multiple times. You can make it jump multiple times. You can change the name. I'm going to change the name to Rive. I hit save name, and there it is. So now you see how far we've come along with this application. We've assembled all the animations, all those great animations that were created in Rive. We were able to bring them over to Flutter. We were able to trigger them with code. You see how we were able to apply all those strategies to rebuild the UI based on changes from the user, from the code, how we're able to rebuild all those widgets that contain Rive animations, how we're able to do tech support. That was great. I love the fact that you combine the elements of Flutter with elements of Rive to bring an amazing experience for your users. Even just showing a little form with this little character up there, that makes a difference. So those are the things that you need to make sure and pay attention when you're creating amazing experiences for your users. Try to always think outside the box. Try to always deliver a unique experience. Try to put your stamp of approval. Try to put like your unique touch to those experiences, such as this one. You see how simple it is, but still it comes up like really nice and really clean and very engaging. These are the kind of experiences that our users will be expecting from us. So with that, we'll just wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching. Now, the next one, you don't want to miss it. It will be about how you optimize Rive's performance for Flutter. How do you do appropriate loading and pre-caching of your Rive assets? How you optimize the way you create the widgets that contain Rive animations. So I'm going to be bringing the goods on that. Stay tuned for the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you there. Hey everyone, I'm Roman. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on other Flutter content coming my way. Thank you so much for your support. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media.